Yeah, good to be here. And I guess for those who don't know the exact background of the Hub story, the Hub platform, the platform was created 15 years ago, and it was built on the basis of technology to run SMAs, managed accounts, from the outset. So it wasn't a bolt-on to an existing platform and having to do workarounds. It was purpose-built for managed accounts. The managed account business at Hub is around 38 billion under management. So it's the largest administrator of managed accounts in the marketplace, and 45 cents in every dollar that comes onto the platform, and we're taking about $15 billion net flow per year, goes into managed accounts, SMAs, MDAs, etc. So a big background. Don't know what that noise is. Is that outside or is that me? It's been going on all day. So my first question to ask, and just to get a pulse check here, who has used SMAs, MDAs, managed accounts? Okay, so roughly about half. Who's just using them for new clients or just a select couple of clients rather than fully embraced in the practice? Okay, so about half of that. Presuming the rest are using it more fully, and I'm presuming those that haven't put your hand up that you're not currently using them. So how does that compare to the industry? So this is investment trends data across around 900 practices. The dark blue bars, the first bars on the bottom, is the actual users of managed accounts, SMAs, going back to 2018, and we can see that that now sits at 56%. So that's roughly what we saw here in the room with hands up. Now that doesn't mean they're using them fully for every single client or existing business, but they're embracing and using. The next bar above that, the lighter blue, 34%, getting to 22%, were those that were intending to use managed accounts in the following 12 to 18 months. And what we've seen is a conversion, if you like, from intent to actual usage, and particularly over the last 5 years or so. And if my maths is right, I went to the same school, that means that 78% are either using or intending to use managed accounts as their solution in the next 12, 18 months. So a lot of growth, a lot of people have embraced managed accounts. So what's driven that? It's been a number of things in the industry, from reg change, best interest duty, changes to advice fee standards, increased compliance and admin burden. Anyone experienced that in the last 5-10 years? Yep. And we've seen also best of breed platforms come to the front, particularly as the banks have exited out of financial services and vertical integration is basically gone. And so the search for advice processes and practice efficiency is the forefront. The cost to serve, the cost to deliver to clients has gone up, and clients can only bear so much of the cost. And technology has really advanced to the point where now most clients are doing most things using technology, using apps, whether it be for travel, book accommodation, look for things to shop. They may not buy on it, but they're going to look or do their research, etc. And therefore the consumer, their expectations and their trends have changed quite a bit. And I relate this to, or an analogy of maps versus apps. Has anyone in the room got one of these in their car? Yes? We have one. What version is it? What year? I bet it goes back a way. right? Maps, Gregory's maps were great. Everyone had a Gregory's map, right? And it still will get you from point A to point B. Some of the roads don't exist anymore. Some have turned into one-way roads, etc. And often turns into fights with your co-navigator, right? Who has the map upside down, or, the road doesn't exist, etc. But eventually you'll get there in a manual process. Now we're using apps for navigation. Has anyone been using an app called Waze, W-A-Z-E? Yep, okay, so about a third. Do yourself a favour and download it. I've been on it for about 6 years. Google Maps have bought it because it's superior to Google Maps. It's live data, tells you where there are traffic build-ups, a car broken down on the left-hand side, a mobile police sitting on the side of the road, saved me a fortune in speeding fines. It tells you quicker, better, more efficient ways to get from point A to point B. And it's using live data, satellite data. So we've got these apps, just like managed accounts, will get you there quicker, better, faster, more efficiently, less stress, more transparency, versus the administration way with client consent, paperwork, etc., which served us well as an industry. It's all that we had. I've been in the industry for 30 years. That's how we started. But there are better, more efficient ways to do it. So I've got 3 examples here. I talked to a lot of practices that have converted across to a managed account environment. And often you'll get the same sort of reasons and rationale from each group that you talk to. But these were just these standout components for me from these 3 particular advisors' practices. Tim Townsend does a lot of emceeing in our industry, been around for a long time, Tim, and what his main driver around the change was the client consent model had its limitations. There was a constant feeling of potentially leaving clients behind on the battlefield. We needed a solution to be able to act decisively, quickly and effectively across all of our clients. And Tim will be the first person who will put his hand up and say, if the markets go through massive movements and change, volatility, and he needs to get to his clients to trim or modify their portfolio, he said, my 220 clients in the practice, I can only get to speak to about 5 in a day. I've got to produce an ROA, get the client consent, and then move the client's portfolio. And that could be a 2-week process. And he said, the poor bunny at client number 220, it could be months. And so if I'm a client of Tim's and my sister is a client of Tim's, and I've had the conversation with Tim, we need to move your portfolio, or markets are getting a little bit over exuberant, we want to take a bit of risk off the table, whatever the conversation needs to be. And I'm chatting with my sister at a barbecue the next weekend, and she says, oh no, Tim hasn't spoken to me yet. It's a disjointed approach. And so Tim felt really uncomfortable with that process. And the clients that he would have gone to first were his most valuable, highest funds under management clients, and worked down the list. And that's just human nature, right? You have to do that. Christine Swanton, based in Adelaide, her primary thing was client portfolios are updated automatically and efficiently as needed by professionals rather than by me and my practice. So it's taken away the key person responsibility and risk. Secondly, she likes to go on holidays for 4 weeks over to Europe and not have to worry about the portfolios. And I don't know about you, almost every time I go away for a long holiday, that's when markets go crazy. I don't know why. And then Tim Garrick, based in Melbourne, loved picking stocks, loved having asset manager conversations and picking the funds, ETFs, blending the portfolios. That was his passion, he loved that. He had too many clients and worked out that the value wasn't in those components. The value was spending more time with his clients talking about strategy, goals, family, and getting very deep into that relationship with the client. And he was getting too bogged down in trying to establish portfolios, admin, and all the rest. And clients said, we don't know what you do with all of that stuff. They didn't value it. They expected it to be great and reasonable, but what they're paying for is his time and his expertise and his counselling. And so it's freed up his time to do more of that. He's outsourced. Some say outsource. We call it insourcing the investment expertise into the practice. And it's a big part of the value proposition. It's not just me or a couple of us in the practice making decisions. We have a party that we insource for that sort of responsibility. And they spend all of their time focusing on that. So as I said, common things across all, but these were kind of the standouts. So managed portfolios, I won't go through the absolute basics, but you can invest in just about anything that you can do with a model portfolio. You can have managed funds, you can have ETFs, you can have direct equities, you can have core satellite, you can have passive, you can have whatever mix that you want under the hood. But the difference is professional management, overseeing that. Transparency, so the platform will allow you to drill down to individual holdings, individual stocks, if there are individual stocks in the portfolio, and you'll be able to look at tax optimisation, which is on the right-hand side, because the assets are held in the client for the client's responsibility. So if it's direct equities, they're buying parcels of shares as opposed to being in a unit trust environment. But they can have combinations, right? But the technology is there to be able to, we've built algorithms into the system to hit a button to minimise tax, use first in, first out tax liabilities, or maximise gains. And the system will go and search for the best parcels. So they might have been investing regularly with different cost bases, and it will work out what's the most effective use of those cost bases to minimise the tax. And so that can save the client quite a bit of money. The second part, or the third I should say, is the portability to minimise switching costs. So most people think of switching from one fund to another, and that's certainly the case. But another example is switching within. So for example, a Morningstar, a Lonsec, an Alston, or whoever, growth option, SMA, to a balanced option. If they were funds, you'd have to crystallise the asset, pay capital gains tax, and pay the buy-sell spreads to move into the other asset. And you're just changing risk profile. With a managed account and SMA, what you're doing is leaving the bulk of the assets intact, and it's only the recipe that changes from growth to balanced. So it might be that 70, 75%, 80% of the assets remain intact and they don't trigger a capital gains tax event, nor a cost event. Does that make sense? So it's only the changes that you need to make to align that portfolio to balanced that gets impacted by tax. And so that's, well, we call that platform alpha, right? We think about investment alpha, trying to outperform markets. You can use technology in the tax system built in through an SMA structure to minimise the tax for the client. So that's managed accounts. This is what the benefits are according to advisors under the investment trends data. It's about reducing the risks for the business. It's about lower compliance burdens. There's no ROAs required. When you're having an asset manager, their SMA, being monitored and decisions made and swept across all client portfolios at all times, right? You only need ROAs if you're changing structure or doing something a bit different, you know, a change for the client rather than just the ongoing management. A lot of effectiveness, effective ways of investing in direct equities. Clients can see the underlying assets, the tax CGT element, which I just mentioned then, facilitates more goal and strategic conversations with the client because a lot of the admin has been reduced. Best interest duty. All clients are being treated with the same changes to their portfolio on the day. The instruction comes from the SMA manager to sell BHP or sell XYZ ETF or fund, rebalance the portfolio before 11 o'clock, and then we go to market during the day. All clients get the same investment, same price, same whatever. So consistency for all. Client benefits, just quickly, beneficial ownership, portability, which saves on tax and cost, diversification, you can get anything pretty much you can create, transparency, drilling down, seeing the portfolios, seeing it on the client's app. They can't instruct, that's got to be through the advisor, but they can see. Tax optimisation we spoke about, and the other one is being able to tailor the solution to the client's needs. So in other words, you can put a rule in against that client's account to substitute an investment or a sector with another. So you take the asset manager's recipe, might be growth, and you say no BHP, because my client used to work for BHP and has a whole heap of BHP shares and we don't want to buy more. So let's exclude that and put that asset instead into Rio or cash or across the portfolio. So your portfolio will drift a little bit compared to the main, but it's got that flexibility to exclude and make changes in the portfolio. And for that to be automated, every new investment that goes in, that rule is attached to that client's account. Don't invest in BHP, put it here instead. Less paperwork. So it transforms, we believe, the value proposition of an advice business. Best interest duty, best platform, best technology, lower tax, all those sort of things. Greater client engagement, so you're not spending so much time on paperwork, but on more meaningful conversations with the client. Consistent and equitable client outcomes. Stronger client value proposition. So what do they solve for practices? Reducing the paperwork and compliance side for investment reviews. It enables a better client experience and outcomes, like for tax, for example. It adds greater control and speed to market. Instruction in by 11, all done during the day. No waits, no lags, no delays. Doing it through a model portfolio, client consent, ROA, and then administratively doing it can delay that process by a couple of weeks, a month. And the good idea of making a change to the portfolio, some of that can be lost. Okay. And I guess the old way of model portfolios or individual portfolios typically meant 1 or 2 reviews point in time for a client. Might be February, might be August, just a one-off snapshot and a change. as opposed to changes being done when needed on any particular day by the asset manager. Adds to the firm's investment capability offer, increases advisor capacity. That's a really interesting one. We come across so many practices that have got to capacity, and that capacity on average is about 120 full service clients per advisor. Okay, but by reducing the admin, the investment admin work, etc., what it does is gives the capacity for the advisor to grow again and take on, say, another 25 clients, 145 on average. And improves the tech stack. Everything is using that technology to the advantage. So this is the best way I've been able to explain managed accounts. And look, I've been with Hub for 5 years, head of the managed account, managed portfolio business, but I've been on the asset management side with groups like JP Morgan, Perpetual. I've been on the passive side. I was head of distribution for Vanguard, brought ETFs to the market. I've been on the licensee side, managing 300 advisors, about 100 practices. And I've been a practitioner as well. So this is the best way I've been able to come up with how to explain it to clients. So the client goes into their managed portfolio or the managed portfolio environment where the assets are held directly by them. Okay. The professional portfolio manager is selected by the advisor, and that professional portfolio manager takes responsibility from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. That's the economic oversight, investment monitoring, selection, a stock in, a fund out, whatever's needed, pull back the equities a little bit, it's getting a little bit heated. Now let's move back in. Rebalance automatically implemented, any portfolio changes are automated, and the instructions go from that portfolio manager with the keys into the engine of our platform with instructions of any changes that they wish to do, and then it's swept through all client accounts administratively. So what that does is then allows the advisor to spend more time around using the tax optimisation tools, to monitor in real time, every single day it's updated of the portfolio, and has a responsibility to hire and fire the asset manager if they're not doing their job. Right? And you just lift the recipe off and you put the new recipe over the top, and it doesn't disrupt the whole of the portfolio, only the parts that need to be adjusted to the new manager's investment recipe. And that frees up the time for the advisor to spend much more time on the higher value advice tasks, if you like, or delivery around strategic advice, goal setting, client management, getting into the next generation of clients. Multi-generational transfers are going to be really important in the years to come. And so getting deeper and more in depth with the client is going to be really important. And as I said, frees up a bit more time in the practice to be able to take on more clients as well. So the amount of time savings for a practice that has moved primarily to a managed account environment, and that might be 60, 70%, 80%, 90% of their total business, is 22 hours per week, according to Investment Trends. So they survey around 200 advice practices that use managed accounts and about the same number who don't, and they work out where time is spent around investment reviews and the processes. And it's about 22 hours of difference between the two cohorts. Now that's a fair amount of time to get back in the business. When we look at hundreds of groups that have been through this process of moving to a managed account environment, We found they fall into 5 different types of buckets. One is in using that time, they'll go into growth acquisition. So they'll be able to move from 120 clients each to about 145 over a few years. We've got another group that wants to enhance their service. They might have been undercharging. The best time to review whether you're charging an appropriate amount is when you go and make a change to a system that delivers faster, quicker, better, more transparency. And in fact, the stats are telling us that those using managed accounts are charging more to clients than those that aren't. And yet they've streamlined their approach, but the client sees more value in what they're delivering now. We've got cohorts that want to maximise their business value. In other words, run leaner. Don't want to grow anymore. Done that over 20 years, right? I just want to run leaner. I might be a few years away, 5 years away from retirement. I want to maximise the value of my business, and that's my driver. And we've got work-life balance. Anyone like some work-life balance? Yeah. Yeah. Jonathan, no, you're not allowed to. That's a real issue, burnout. We see that regularly. Advisors working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. We see burnout at staff level as well, producing ROAs and admin and all that type of thing. So we've got cohorts that do it primarily for work-life balance, and we also see merger and acquisition opportunities. So often we'll see practices trying to get to an efficient position by scale, by buying more clients, but they're putting them on a manual system, model portfolios, client consents, etc. The better way to do that is to actually get your back office schmick and running very efficiently. Then when you purchase a book of clients, they're coming onto a quicker, faster, better delivered service and run at less cost as well. So the profit hits the bottom line of the practice much quicker and much easier. So I'm going to just ask a question here, and I'm only going to give you one option. You've probably got 3 in mind out of these 5, and most do. But if you had 22 hours back in your business, which single option would be your primary driver? So hands up for those who'd say, I'd go back into growth mode, client acquisition. Yep. Okay. Who would enhance the client's service and maybe look at reviewing their fees and that type of thing, or delivery to the client? Yep. Couple. Yep. Who would like to maximise business value? Yep. Okay, who would like work-life balance? Right, that's pretty common, right? It's normally 2 hands go up, right? Give me balance. Who'd like to go into purchasing and acquiring businesses? Okay, so there's one or 2 within that. Okay, so overwhelmingly work-life balance, right? A bit of growth, a bit of client enhancement. And of course, no one here is old enough to be thinking about retirement and maximising the value of their business. No. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is spend a little bit of time on some modelling demonstrations of what could happen to a business. And this modelling was done between Lonsec and ourselves. We got together and looked at benchmarking across the industry and looked at some tools of being able to model what would happen if you went into growth, what would happen if you wanted to run leaner and take some cost out of the business, or change your service delivery and therefore maybe the cost of delivery. And what we've been able to do And this is all generic. It's not about Lonsec and it's not about Hub24 either, right? So this would apply to any scenario. Now I've got to see if I can get this to come up. I'll just take that off and then back on again. I've been told you do an off and an on, and that fixes most things. There'll be $1,000 for that. Yeah, so what we did is we grabbed a number of different sources of benchmarking, which came from sources like Investment Trends Report 2003, Advice Efficiency by Iris and Business Health, Advisor Ratings, which is the Advice Landscape by Lonsec and Premium, Future Ready by Business Health, Hayes Salary Guides. We actually use Kazan salary guides for planner salaries, but Hayes for paraplanners, client admin, etc. Centurion for practice acquisition multiples, if you like, from their experience of what sells in the market for financial planning practices. And we've just taken, where we can, the information out of all of these to then create some assumptions on your right-hand side, the blue box. And so what we've been able to do there is, two of the reports were saying basically 6 advisors in a practice, not advisors, 6 staff, full-time staff in a practice is the average across Australia, across all states, okay? The ratio between support staff and paraplanning is about 40% paraplanning, 60% client admin in a typical practice. Now, this is not one using managed portfolios, this is just right across the industry. So that's kind of the assumptions that we've made there. Ongoing service advice fees have jumped around a little bit. 2022, 4,250, 3,850 off the Advice Efficiency Survey, Investment Trends, 4,700, the most current one. And we can just make an assumption. We can put any figure in there. We've just put 4,000. We know some averages across practices, $10,000 a year. We see some at 3. It varies, right? But these are the averages. And the number of clients have ticked up a little bit since 22 per advisor, and that's probably because of the exit of advisors out of the industry, and therefore the load is being carried a little bit more by everyone in the room. But around about 120 clients seems to be about the average of full service paying clients. And then firms using managed accounts, the average is 5,000. What's that, 5,300, I think it was, which is more than the industry average. So if we keep looking down this line, we'll see other income, which is about 300,000, 299,000. So that is things like the initial one-off SOA fee. Could be some advice around mortgages, insurance, other different components. And this is for a 2.5 average advisor generating business, right? So 2.5 with support staff is 6. We also have in there the average gross practice revenue is about 2.4, 2.5 for 6 people in the practice. We also know that the ratio between salaries and operational expenses, rent, licensee fees, electricity bills, everything that comes with running a business is about 2/3 staff, 1/3 operating expense. Time efficiency, 22 hours, we've been through that. Business vals, about 5 to 7 is the range of multiple on profit, or EBITDA. So 6 is a pretty typical multiple that we've used. So we now flip across to the actual benchmarking example. And so what we have is the 2.5 industry benchmark, $4,000 a year, 120 clients per advisor is 300 clients. The ongoing review service fee, 1.2 mil, so about 480,000 per advisor in a practice. Additional income about 120 per advisor, being about 300,000. Total revenues about 1.5, and we can right size this to a practice just benchmarking. So we could, for example, go, right, it's a 4-person practice, 120 clients each, 480 clients, revenue's gone up, the ratios of paraplanners are all filtered through, so a four advisor practice has about 9.6 staff. Does this make sense? And we could benchmark at a much higher $6,000 average fee, etc., right? And run the profit and loss through that. We could run this as a sole operator. A sole operator would have 0.56 of a paraplanner, and that might be outsourced, right? 0.8 of client admin for a 2.4 person practice, sole operator. So we just build the ratios through. Now I'll just do this as a 2.5 average. We run through all the salary bills. So the salaries, we can have an advice practice principal who takes zero salary and very high profit in the business. We can have the opposite to that, draws a salary of $300,000 a year, less profit. But the way in which the business consultants, valuers look at the practice is, we don't care about that. We just remove that component and say, if we had to put someone in, what would that be? What would that expense be? And so Kazan are saying in the range of kind of 130 to about 160 for an advisor as a base salary. They're saying for someone with less than 5 years experience, it's about 100 to about 120. And you'll see that there's big differences between taking Sydney CBD expenses or salaries versus, say, Adelaide or Cairns or whatever, right? But these are the averages. Paraplanning is around $88,000 per paraplanner. Again, you can pay more or less. Client admin, about $70,000, and then the other costs. Then what we can do is we can start modelling. So we can model, if we take that example, 120 clients each is 300 clients across 2.5 advisors. We could say, what if we were taking our 22 hours and applying that to taking on more clients over a few years? So we're going to increase the client numbers by 20%. So 60 more clients, so it's about 20 something each per advisor, so 20, 24, 25, over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever the time frame. We could also increase the ongoing revenue. If that was too low, and if we wanted that to be more like looking like an practice that uses managed accounts, it's closer to $5,000 per client. So we could do that. We could look at reducing some of the hours of staff. And a lot of practices may have staff that want to be on reduced hours, right? But let's just focus for this purpose just on growing. If we were just looking at growth only and not touching revenue, and we're looking at business valuations typically 6 times, a practice that is run through a managed account environment is less risky for a purchaser. It doesn't rely on key person, and the delivery is faster, quicker, better, transparent, whatnot. The multiple should go up. I'd be prepared to pay, I'd be prepared to pay more for that business that had more inherent risk in it. So we're just assuming a 10% increase, a multiple of 6.6, for example. We could do whatever you wish to do there. But effectively, what that does when you start going down to P&L is you look at the current situation and the proposed, and the only proposal we're making there is 20% more clients over a time period. So the ongoing service fees increase. We haven't had to increase staff because we've got capacity to be able to do that and redirect into more marketing activities, referral sources, whatever we wish to do. And we look at other income. We end up with the expenses running through for staff and ongoing expenses. And what we're doing is taking the income less the expenses is a net profit. So in this case, the current is a net profit of $580,000. If we increase the client numbers by 20%, not increasing the overheads and the staff to do that, our profit ends up being $823,000. So in other words, a 20% increase in clients has resulted in a 40% increase in net profit. And if we want to look at valuations, and we look at a multiple of 6 times on the current, would be a business val of about $3.5 million. If we looked at a business val at 6.6 times, an enhanced profit, net profit, we end up with a business valuation of about 5.4. So we've enhanced the sale value, or you've enhanced your sale value in your practice by almost $2 million, or about 55%. We could add to that an increase in revenue. You know, you could do that. And the best time to do that is when you go and make a change to quicker, faster, better services. Right? So what we're able to do, and Lonsec can do this as well, we both share, this the model, is to model based on your circumstances. How many full-time financial planners in the business? What's your ongoing service fee average? How many clients do you have? What's your other additional revenue? What's your staff ratios? How many paraplanners, client admin? What's the salary bill on those, etc. What's your overheads and expenses in the business? And then we can start modelling around growth, running leaner, enhancing your revenue and your business valuation. And again, we can create some examples and some scenarios. Now, we and Lonsec don't just send people the model. We want to keep the model current. It's our IP, our shared IP. Our teams are very happy to sit down with you and do some modelling, give you the results, the extracts out of that, scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, whatever. But I can tell you now that this is a real game changer, and to put this into a practical context of what it can do for your business, hasn't really been done before, and it brings it alive. And I've done this on groups, with 20 staff, like Big Six accounting practices that run financial planning arms. It works to a T, the profit, etc., and the valuations, and it makes a huge difference. So transitioning across to this type of system is, it's a bit of a decision. There's a little bit of pain, as in needing to get your value proposition right, get the asset manager of your choice right, and then have a plan of who could be moved to this type of system, and then the plan of moving them to the system. Typically, we find it takes around 12 months, depends how quick you want to move on it. But we have a team of 8 transition managers, and the first bit of what they do is they, through confidentiality agreement, is actually do an analysis of your whole book and work out which clients can be moved, which have other issues that may make it difficult to move. And then they devise a plan and work with the practice at your pace and your time frame. And then we also, through our team, pre-populate SOAs and things like that to make the move, and then monitor and manage either fortnightly or monthly, where there might be blockages or issues, and our team have been dealing with this all the time. They do about 6 billion of transitions per year, and they know all the platforms, they know all the things to do with in-specie transfers or whatever, and can devise a plan. So I'd suggest talking to your Hub24 BDM, and we've got Jack Rook at the back there. Jack, if you put your hand up for a second. But there's a team of 5 or 6 here in Sydney to help you with that if you want to explore that. Often what happens is I get involved in a virtual meeting sense around this modelling, which normally takes about an hour and a half, with the BDM involved, with your practice, whoever you want in the practice, and that's just something to help you on that journey or decision-making process. So thank you for your attention. Hope that was of value, and we look forward to helping you where we can. Thank you.